What the Hi. Okay, so I binged Ginger Ninja OWO videos like crazy over the summer, especially the team game videos, and seeing everyone have such fun and iconic Sona designs made me think, wow, I have to look this cool. So here we are. So basically, today I'm gonna walk you guys through my process of designing my new Sona mascot thing, whatever, and also my Genshin Sona that I mentioned back in my LMA video, which you guys should totally watch, by the way. This video is sponsored by me. Hopefully the character design tips I share along the way are useful to you guys, so let's get into it. But first, a word from me in the future as I'm editing this. So I don't know what happened between the two editing softwares I used to fix up the audio, but there are multiple moments where the voiceover fluctuates between sounding decent and being really wonky. Yes, I shouldn't have recorded in an echoey room, but even so, I considered re-recording the whole thing, but I just barely had the motivation to edit this as it is, and I didn't even notice this problem until I'd gone pretty far, so the thought of starting over was very upsetting. I've done what I can, but this is an L I'll just have to take. If you're willing to keep watching despite this issue, I highly appreciate it. If not, then I understand. Okay, moving on. First, I want to talk real quick about my old Sona, which was basically just me without any of the embellishments. It's kind of outdated now because literally every part of that outfit was given away ages ago, and I don't have ginger tips in my hair anymore, though to be fair, I change my hairstyle all the time anyways. Even so, I liked the format I drew the sprites in, having a base for the head and torso and enjoying multiple variations of arms, eyes, mouths, etc. on separate layers for me to mix and match as I pleased. It was kind of like having a pick crew of myself. Yeah, I decided to try drawing different poses for these new sprites for more variety, but I'll still pat my past self on the back for working smarter, not harder. And I definitely recommend this method if you're just starting out with sprites or simply don't feel like drawing so many poses. If you're worried about making your sprites seem boring like I did for a bit, stop that. No one worth their views will care. But obviously, you can't make sprites without first making the design, so as I normally do when I make new characters, I started with rough traditional sketches to get a feel for both the design itself and some potential sprites. The general design kinda came naturally to me. I based the hairstyle off of one I've done before, which was basically ombre box braids tied up into two bigger braids, and I brought back the varsity jacket from my Danganronpa Sonas since I still really liked it, and yes, the angel wings I added later are inspired by the Hellovians from Hawkeye Sorrel. I even considered giving myself a halo to replace the flowers from the earliest design before I settled on a laurel wreath instead. A wreath that I didn't even keep in the sprites, but don't worry about that. Everything else was just decisions based on clothes and colors that I like, which is all a Sona has to be. Honestly, I'll be very honest, it's kind of hard to give specific guidance on how to make one because they're so personal. It's just a matter of asking yourself, what do you like? What kind of art do you make? What do you already look like? How do you want to look? Do you even want your Sona to be you or someone/something else? Are you designing the Sona to be a singular 3D model or a 2D design that you're gonna hand draw multiple times and would benefit more from simplicity? All that and more will influence the final product, so just brainstorm to your heart's content and see where it takes you. Character design tip, by the way, always be open to making changes between the concept design and the final design. It's easy to get super attached to the first idea you have and run with it, which is fine sometimes, but there's also the risk of restricting yourself from ways to improve on it. For example, my new Sona stayed mostly the same all the way through, but switching the droopy socks and sneakers combo to frilly socks and Mary Jane's was a change I'm glad I made. Except for when I had to draw a back view of the shoes, I don't know what I was thinking. So after doing all that, plus a digital concept sketch to lay down the palette, I got started on the main reference sheet. I drew multiple ref sheets and turnarounds back in my college days as an illustration student, and what I consider to be one of the most important tips with these is to keep the pose simple. If you're drawing not just a front view but also a back view or God forbid a couple of other angles, you will need to make sure that you choose a pose that you can easily replicate in all those angles. The A pose and T pose are very common in these types of references, and for good reason. I allowed myself to make my Sona's pose a little dynamic since this isn't a full turnaround, and even then I regretted raising the left foot the way I did because again, the fucking shoe! By the way, another reason why the A and T poses are very helpful for references is clarity, aka making sure important details of the design aren't covered up by arms or moving fabric or anything like that. No one wants to do guesswork. If you're wondering about layouts and the best way to arrange a stylized reference sheet, so am I. It always takes me a bit of deliberation to decide the layouts on these kind of things, but same as with the design itself, there isn't really a right or wrong way to draw your reference sheets as long as all the information is concise and easy to understand, especially for anyone else who wants to draw the design. Of course, though, there's the exception for if you're working with a studio that has like a template and guidelines for these things. In fact, some of the advice I'd give here would be very different if we were talking about industry projects and not just silly personal ones. Anyways, you're free to experiment with whatever else you want to add. Your characters' expressions, what they carry in their bag, a color palette section, or even just written notes about their lore and miscellaneous design facts. Do whatever you want forever, but remember, clarity is key. Speaking of doing whatever you want, what I want is to have an animal companion. Yes, I already have a pet dog named Robin, my littlest guy, but that's not enough whimsy. So as a callback to this Cloud Fox thing I gave one of my earlier Sonas, and to soothe the fact that I also want a pet rabbit but can't right now, I designed a little cloud bunny called Andromeda, whose eyes and lack of mouth were definitely not subconsciously inspired by one of the hyperfixations that I absolutely should not have had as a child. How much I end up doing with her as a character slash mascot is yet to be decided, but what matters right now is that I think she turned out really cute. Anyways, that's enough about my shiny new artist Sona, so let's move on to my Genshin Sona now. Quick note though, so you guys don't get confused, I tend to treat my current Genshin Sona like a separate person for reasons I'll get into later, so at a point I'll switch from first person pronouns to third person. Got that? Okay, now let's move on. I would have loved to use the time lapse of the main reference, but that footage did not record, so instead I'll be using the one for my birthday art featuring Aoife because I am, in fact, a part-time self-shipper. Anyways, my earliest Genshin Sona design was from March 2021. Obviously, this was long before Natlan was released, so I just made Mondstadt my region. Honestly, I don't have a lot to say because I don't remember my exact thought process aside from make myself look cool and somewhat Genshin-y, but I still kind of like that design, and as you will soon see, a bunch of these elements still carried over to the future ones. Also, this was back when foxes were my favorite animal, hence the hat that even now I have no idea how that thing was supposed to stay on. The first redesign is from June 2021, which shocked me to realize because my memory, ever the unreliable narrator, made me think that these designs were at least a year apart, not just 3 months apart. Well, to be fair, the changes were minimal anyways. I just wanted to make the design a little more cohesive. I find it really funny how I removed the dangling accessories from the hats because I can't remember if I forgot them or if I decided to be realistic, because having those things swinging in my face every time I move would just piss me off. Another change I made was actually giving myself some basic in-game info. Reading from the original Instagram post now, my title was Scripted Destruction, same as before. I was a 5-star Electro Claymore. My affiliation was Oluchi Theater Hall. My constellation was Volpes Lucibus, which apparently is Latin for dancing fox, but you know how Google Translate is. And lastly, my description was a traveling actress currently settled in Mondstadt, best known for her musical shows and interest in comic arts. Which is pretty decent, honestly. The thing about me doing musicals was definitely wish fulfillment though, because yes, I'm a solid actress, but my singing and dancing skills aren't really there yet. Lesson 0, if you don't give your self-insert the traits you wish you had, are they really your self-inserts? Jokes and foundations aside, we can now talk about the second redesign, which I did in February 2025. Like I said, some elements from the old design stayed. For example, the ombre hair, which again is literally just something I do a lot IRL, the diamond shapes on the skirt, the pinafore-ishness of the skirt, the dress, etc, etc. The major changes and their reasoning though are as follows. 1. The jackalope theme. I still like foxes, but right now I'm very fond of jackalopes instead because they're literally just a combo of bunnies and deers, which are other animals I like a lot. Okay, maybe I'm just really partial towards woodland creatures in general. 2. The Natlan and Nigerian influences. As much as I dislike a lot of things about Natlan character designs, I am unfortunately still a bit of a perfectionist and wanted my Sona to fit in at least a little bit with the pre-existing cast. So I made sure to add some Natlan staples like the geometric patterns, body markings for the Night Soul state, etc. And of course some staples from my own culture, such as the red coral beads that are often worn for traditional events and the quote-unquote whiskers that are actually just tribal scars. I wanted to give my dress an Ankara pattern too, but I'm lazy. Also, even though Natlan has 3 characters with Nigerian or Nigerian adjacent names, none of the 7 tribes have any Nigerian theming, so I just made my own. My perfectionism doesn't extend that far. The tribe's called Everlasting Roots. It's mostly based on Igbo culture because that's what I'm from. And it's dendro themed because I like flowers, and if the Scions of the Canopy has a problem with that, they can take it up with my lawyer. Speaking of dendro, you might have noticed on my Sona's reference that I made her dendro vision pink, mainly because I thought that random pop of green would look garish with the rest of the design. Pink and green can work great together, mind you, but not here. Anyways, the in-world reason for that is just She just painted her vision. The third most important change was making my Sona a puppet. Maybe it's the Undertale fan in me, but I love messing around with meta storytelling. So here's the thing. Yes, she's me, but like I said before, I tend to treat her more like a separate person, a clone slash homunculus that I made to be my assistant who explores Tavat on my behalf and ensures the stories of my other OCs go according to plan. Kind of like I'm Madame Herta and Genshin Vaughn and all my other Sonas throughout this weird little fandom multiverse are my mini Hertas. Also, the Tavat she lives in isn't the real Tavat. It's an alternate version born from the collective daydream of other Genshin, OC, and Sona creators, with even more alternate versions based on whose storylines are the most quote-unquote compatible. Basically, an ever-shifting world where everyone's fanon is canon, and Genshin Vaughn is one of the only people within that world who actually knows that it's all fake. Anyways, in universe, she's just known as an illustrator who travels with and makes promotional material for a circus that I may or may not talk about another time, who's to say? Another thing is that her personality is fairly different from what I tend to show here. See, I consider myself an ambivert and no, I do not care for the debate around this, it's a real thing to me. So while I like being peppy and expressive a lot of the time, Genshin Vaughn embodies the side of me that's much more reclusive, quiet, and honestly very irritable. Basically, if you split my personality in half, you'd get her and this new Sona. Which is kind of funny, because major tangent, I already did something similar when I was much younger. Again, I've had many Sonas over the years, and the main one from when I was around 14 was called Pandora. During that time, I also had an idea for a multiverse based on my imagination called the Pandoverse, where every story of mine was its own universe within it. When I stopped calling myself Pandora, I decided to turn her into an OC and give her a companion named Kato, based on my right brain and left brain respectively. Yes, this is based on that one Bo Burnham song. I saw Pandora and Kato as the guardians of my imagination, overlooking all my stories and occasionally checking on their respective characters. And this is where I'd show the art I made of them, if I had any. Yeah, despite how long ago I made those characters and how important they're supposed to be, I never actually drew them. Mainly because I struggled a lot with getting Pandora's hair to look how it did in my mind, so I kind of just gave up altogether. Maybe I'll revamp them someday, I don't know. Anyways, that's all I have to say for now. What do you guys think of my Sonas? Answer wisely, I still have some nukes left over. Seriously though, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and better yet, I hope you learned something from it. As always, likes, comments, and shares are highly appreciated, and my Ko-fi and VGen are linked below if you'd like to check them out. My commissions are currently set to waitlist, but my VGen shop is still open with adoptables and bases if you'd like to buy them. Thank you again for all your support, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!